All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Today's deep dive is going to be a fascinating one. We're taking a look at Ali Khamenei.
Ooh, interesting choice.
Right. He's been leading Iran for, like, what, over 3 decades now?
Since 89?
89, yeah. And we're using his Wikipedia page as our guide.
Wikipedia, huh?
Yeah, it's a surprisingly good starting point, at least to get a sense of the different narratives surrounding him.
I mean, he's been called everything from, what, a divine gift to mankind
Let's-
to a
let's-
straight up dictator.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
He's definitely a controversial figure. But before we get into all that, I think it's important to remember he was also Iran's third president.
Right. Before becoming supreme leader.
Exactly. So we're talking to someone who's held immense power in Iran for a very long time. And his life has been, well, let's just say it's been full of twists and turns.
Like, surviving an assassination attempt.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The
Yeah.
one that paralyzed his right arm.
I mean, that's got to leave a mark,
Yeah.
Physically and probably mentally, too.
Can't even imagine.
Talk about resilience.
Seriously. So get ready, folks. We're about to explore the life of this, let's just call him a complex figure. We'll look at his early life, how he rose to power, and all the controversies that have surrounded his leadership.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, pretty much. It's going to be a wild ride.
I'm ready. Let's go.
So when you first look at Khamenei, what's the first thing that strikes you?
That's a good question. I think it's this clash, right? This paradox almost that he embodies, like modern Iran itself.
Go on.
Well, on one hand, he's this, this cleric, deeply traditional, leading a theocracy.
Right.
But on the other, he's also like this super shrewd political operator,
Oh.
surviving that assassination attempt. That alone tells you something about what the kind of resilience you need, maybe even ruthlessness, to stay at the top in a system like Iran's.
Makes you wonder how that assassination attempt, really shaped him,
Totally.
Did it make him more cautious, more determined? I don't know.
It's tough to say for sure. I mean, how can you ever really know what's going on in someone's head?
Right.
But it's got to be a defining moment, right? I mean, the Wikipedia page mentions it happened in 1981, I think.
Yeah.
While he's giving a lecture at a mosque, a bomb hidden in a tape recorder explodes right next to him.
Wow.
It's crazy he even survived. Can you imagine that? The impact, feeling that vulnerable, knowing your life is constantly on the line.
I mean, and then just a year later, he becomes Iran's first cleric to be president.
Whoa, what a shift for the country.
Big time.
Talk about a turning point in Iranian politics.
Absolutely. What does that tell us about where Iran was headed at that time?
Well, I think it shows how much the Islamic Revolution had taken hold, right?
Yeah.
It was really solidifying its grip on power. And Khamenei, he was right at the center of it all.
So his presidency, it was from 81 to 89, right?
Yep, that's right.
What were those years like? What was his focus?
I mean, there was a lot going on, right? You have the Iran-Iraq War, a totally devastated economy, and of course the huge task of making the Islamic Revolution stick, making it work.
So a lot on his plate.
Oh, yeah. But it was during this time that you really see his leadership style taking shape, this mix of pragmatism and ideology. It's really interesting.
You mentioned pragmatism. Is that the same guy who, later clamped down on press freedoms, oversaw those disqualifications of reformist candidates in elections?
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes him so fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
He's not like a simple one-dimensional figure,
Yeah, not at all.
He did crack down, consolidated his power, no doubt about it. But there's also this other side, like when he pushed for privatizing state-owned companies during his presidency.
That's interesting.
Not exactly what you'd expect from a hardliner, right?
No, not really.
Yeah.
So how do we make sense of this? How do these two sides fit together?
Well, I think it comes down to understanding his core values. He's deeply, deeply committed to the Islamic Revolution. He sees himself as its protector, right?
Right.
And so anything he sees as a threat to the regime, whether it's, a shaky economy or political opposition, he's going to come down hard on it.
Makes sense.
But within that framework, he's willing to, to make tactical moves, even if they seem contradictory.
To achieve that bigger goal.
Exactly. It's all about strengthening the country and, of course, his own position.
So he's always playing the long game.
Yeah, always calculating, thinking a few steps ahead. And you can actually see this strategic thinking all the way back in his early years, even his childhood.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
Okay, so he was born in Mashhad, Iran.
Right.
To a family with, super deep religious roots. It's almost like his path was, preordained or something.
But it was destiny.
Kind of, yeah. His father was a respected cleric, so that obviously laid the foundation for his religious education.
He didn't just, like, dabble in religious studies, did he?
Oh, no, not at all. He went all in. First in Mashhad, then Najaf, and finally in Qom.
Qom. That's like the center of Shia learning, right?
Exactly. And while he was there, he studied under some really influential figures, including.
Oh, wait, let me guess. Ayatollah Khomeini.
Bingo. That connection with Khomeini, it's huge. It's where Khamenei's political activism really starts to blossom.
So he becomes a key figure in the Iranian Revolution.
Yeah, he's advocating for the Shah's overthrow. And this wasn't just talk. He was putting himself out there, taking real risks.
Like what?
Well, the excerpts mention how he was arrested multiple times.
Oh, his views.
Yep. And even spent some time in exile. So this was serious business.
So he was already a central figure when the Islamic Republic was established.
Oh, yeah. He was like already in the inner circle. And he took on some really important roles in the early government.
Like what?
He was in charge of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps for a while.
Wow, it's a big deal.
Right. And he even spent time on the battlefield during the Iran-Iraq War.
It's almost like they were, I don't know, grooming him for leadership from the very beginning.
It does kind of seem that way, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then, of course, there's that assassination attempt in 81.
Right. Changes everything.
It's like something out of a movie. He's giving a lecture, the tape recorder explodes, chaos everywhere, and he survives.
And not only survives, but comes back even stronger.
And leads Iran for decades.
Like there's something powerful in him. Something that goes beyond just physical limitations.
It's the will, the ideology, like you said.
Yeah, this unwavering belief in his vision for Iran.
That's a good point. This unwavering belief. Okay, I guess this is a good place to pause for now.
Yeah, let's take a break.
We've covered a lot of ground, from his early life to that fateful assassination attempt.
And how it all kind of shaped him.
Right. But we're just getting started. And the next part, we'll really dig into his leadership style.
Oh, yeah, we're going to unpack all that.
The controversies, his relationship with the West, all of it.
It's going to get juicy.
It is. So make sure you come back for part 2 of our deep dive into Ali Khamenei.
You won't want to miss it. When you think about it, Khamenei's time as president, it really kind of set the stage for how he'd lead as supreme leader.
Yeah, it was like a trial run almost.
Totally. He was dealing with the Iran-Iraq war, the economy was a mess, and he had this huge task of, solidifying the revolution.
Right. A lot of pressure.
Oh, tons of it.
Yeah.
But it's like that crucible really forged his political instincts. You can see it.
It's true. And it's interesting because you mentioned earlier this kind of paradox in his actions, right?
Oh, yeah.
He pushed for some economic reforms, but then at the same time, he was like tightening his grip on power.
Especially when it came to election.
Right. Like, how do you reconcile those two things?
It's that dance between pragmatism and ideology.
Mhm.
It's a constant theme throughout his rule. Like, let's take the 2004 parliamentary elections.
Okay.
The Guardian Council, the one that vets candidates, they disqualified thousands.
Thousands.
Yeah, most of them reformers. And what happened? Conservative landslide?
So basically, he just sidelines any opposition.
Pretty much. And it raises all sorts of questions about how fair, how transparent those elections really were under him.
I mean, that's a pretty blatant power play, wouldn't you say?
It definitely looks that way. And it's not an isolated incident either.
Oh, right, like 2009.
2009, exactly. Ahmadinejad's victory, tons of allegations of fraud, mass protests.
And Khamenei's response.
He stood firm, accused foreign powers of stirring things up.
Classic.
Right. Certified the results, no recount, nothing. Basically crushed any hope of a challenge.
So he shuts down internal dissent,
Yeah.
and at the same time points the finger at external enemies.
The use versus them playbook.
Yeah, I see it.
And you know what? This whole idea of Iran being surrounded by enemies, it becomes this recurring theme in his leadership. It's like this powerful tool, right?
To unify the country.
Totally. Justify crackdowns, deflect criticism. It's all part of the strategy.
And I bet it feeds into his foreign policy outlook too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Especially when it comes to the U.S. and Israel.
Right.
For Khamenei, the U.S. is all about arrogance and imperialism. He sees them as, meddling in the Middle East, causing instability, being completely opposed to Iran's revolution, all of that.
So no chance of like a friendly relationship there.
Not really. Any talk of getting closer, he sees it as a trap. And when it comes to Israel, oh boy, it's even more intense.
Not a hard line.
Way more. He's called it a cancerous tumor that needs to be removed.
Oh, wow.
And there have even been accusations, linking his office to Holocaust denial.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff. It's a constant source of tension, both regionally